and we left off at chapter 6. And I'm going to have to throw those coupons away now because the coupons I was using for a bookmark because they were old now. Anyway. All right. Let's continue. And I'm going to go till about, I'm either going to go till about chapter 15 or 2 hours from now. Martin the chat as usual. I appreciate it, Jay. Nobody should get very ready. Although I have noticed an uptick in bots lately, so. But Surrey bot's been good about sniping them, though, so. You can rest easy. And like I said, so anyway, we're fixing to begin to continue our reading of Wizard for Hire. So thank you, I appreciate it. So make sure you pull up your comfy chair, pull up on the sofa, pull up your comfy nook or wherever you decide to recline and rest and listen. Get your headphones, get your good cup of hot chocolate or your next comforting beverage, and settle down and listen and just relax. Marshmallows for the fire. There you go. But here we go. Chapter 6. Mr. was nowhere to be seen when I got home, but I left the food in his dish anyway. He would eventually forgive me for getting home late. I collected the things I would need from my kitchen: fresh baked bread with no preservatives, honey, milk, a fresh apple, a sharp silver penknife, and a tiny dinner set of a plate, bowl, and cup that I had carved myself from a block of teak wood. I went back out to my car. The Beetle isn't really blue anymore since both doors have been replaced, one with a green clone, one with a white one. And the hood of the storage trunk in front had to be replaced with a red duplicate. But the name stuck anyway. Mike is a super mechanic. He never asked questions about the burdens that slagged a hole in the front hatch or the claw marks that ruined both the doors. You can't pay for service like that. I revved up the Beetle and drove down I-94 around the shore of Lake Michigan, crossing through Indiana briefly, then crossing over the state line to Michigan itself. The Lake Providence is an expensive, high-class community with big houses and sprawling estates. It isn't cheap to own land there. Victor Sells must have been doing well in his former position at Silver Cove to afford a place out that way. The Lakeshore Drive wound in and out among thick, tall trees and rolling hills down to the shore. The properties were well spread out, several hundred yards between them. Most of them were fenced in and had gates on the right side of the road away from the lake as I drove north. The sales house was the only one I saw on the lake side of the drive. A smooth gravel lane lined by trees led back from the Lakeshore Drive to the sales house. A peninsula jutted into the lake, leaving enough room for the house and a small dock, at which no boats were mounted. The house was not a large one by the standards of the rest of the Lake Providence community. Built on 2 levels, it was a very modern dwelling, lots of glass and wood that was made to look like something more synthetic than wood by the way it had been smoothed and cut and polished. I always hate houses like that. Always so artificial. Kind of like that tree in Charlie Brown Christmas, when Linus bangs on it, says, "This really brings Christmas home to a person." That's that kind of feel. The drive curved around to the back of the house where a driveway big enough to host a 5-on-5 game of basketball around the backboard erected to one side and was overlooked by a wooden deck leading off the second level of the house. I drove the Blue Beetle around to the back of the house and parked there. My ingredients were in the black nylon backpack, and I picked that up and brought it with me as I got out of the car and stretched my legs. The breeze coming up from the lake was cool enough to make me shiver a little, and I drew my mantle duster close across my belly. My first impressions are important, and I wanted to listen to what my instincts said about the house. I stopped for a long moment and just stared up at it. My instincts must have been holding out for another bottle of Max Ale. They had little to say other than the place looked like a pricey little dwelling that had hosted a family through many a vacation weekend. Well, where instinct fails, intellect must venture. Almost everything was fairly new. The grass around the house had not grown long enough this winter to require a cutting. The basketball net was stretched out and loose enough to show that it had been used fairly often. The curtains were all drawn. On the grass beneath the deck, something red gleamed, and I went beneath the deck to retrieve it. It was a plastic film canister, red with a gray cap, the kind you keep a roll of film in when you send it to the processors. Yes, I know, that sounds so dated now, doesn't it? Film canisters were good for holding various ingredients I used. Sometimes I tucked it in my duster's pocket and continued my inspection. The place didn't look much like a family dwelling, really. It looked like a rich man's love nest, a secluded little getaway nestled in the back in the trees of the peninsula and safe from spying eyes, or an ideal location for a novice sorcerer to come and try out his fledgling abilities safe from interruptions. A good place for Victor Sells to set up shop and practice. I made a quick circuit of the house, tried the front and rear doors, and even the door up on the deck that led presumably to a kitchen. All were locked. Locks weren't really an obstacle, but Monica Sells hadn't invited me to actually take a look inside the house, just around it. It's bad juju to go tromping into people's houses uninvited. One of the reasons vampires, as a rule, don't do it. They have enough trouble just holding themselves together outside the never ever. It isn't harmful to a human wizard like me, but it can really impair anything you try to do with magic. Also, it just isn't polite. Like I said, I'm an old-fashioned kind of guy. And of course, the Tektronix Securities control panel that I could see through the front window had some say in my decision. Not that I can hex it down to a useless bundle of plastic and wires, but a lot of security systems will cause an alarm with their contact company if they abruptly stop working without notice. It would be a useless exercise in any case. The real information was to be had elsewhere. Still, something nagged at me, a sense of not quite emptiness to the house. On a hunch, I knocked on the front door several times. I even rang the bell. No one came to answer the door. No lights were on inside. I shrugged and walked back to the rear of the house, passing a number of empty trash cans as I did. Now, that was a bit odd. I mean, I would expect a little something in the trash, even if someone hadn't been there in a while. Did the garbage truck come all the way down the drive to pick up trash cans? That didn't seem likely. If the Selleses came out to the house for the weekend and wanted the trash emptied, it would stand to reason they would have to leave it out by the drive near the road as they left, which would seem to imply that the garbage man would leave the empty trash cans out by the road. Someone must have brought them back to the house. Of course, it needn't have been Victor Sells. It could have been a neighbor or something, or maybe he tipped the garbage man to carry the cans back away from the road. But it was something to go on, a little hint that maybe the house hasn't been empty all week. I left the house behind me and walked out toward the lake. The night was breezy and clear and a bit cool. The tall old trees creaked and groaned beneath the wind. It was still early for the mosquitoes to be too bad. The moon was waxing toward full overhead, with the occasional cloud slipping past her like a gauzy veil. It was a perfect night for catching fairies. I swept an area of dirt not far from the lake shore, clear of leaves and sticks, and took the silver knife from the backpack. Using the handle, I drew a circle in the earth and covered it up with leaves and sticks again, marking the location of the circle's perimeter in my head. I was careful to focus in concentration on the circle without actually letting any power slip into it and spoil the trap. Then, working carefully, I prepared the bait by setting out the little cup and bowl. I poured a thimbleful of milk into the cup and daubed the bowl full of honey from the little plastic bear in my backpack. Then I tore a piece of bread from the loaf I'd brought with me and pricked my thumb with the knife. In the silver light of the moon, a bit of dark blood welled up against the skin, and I touched it daintily to the underside of the coarse bread, letting it absorb the blood. Then I set the bread bloody side down on the tiny plate. My trap was set. I gathered up my equipment and retreated to the cover of the trees. There are two parts of magic you have to understand to catch a fairy. One of them is the concept of true names. Everything in the whole world has its own name. Names are unique sounds and cadences of words that are attached to one specific individual. Sort of like a kind of theme music. If you know something's name, you can associate yourself with it in a magical sense. Almost in the same way a wizard can reach out and touch someone if he possesses a lock of their hair or fingernail clippings or blood. If you know something's name, you can create a magical link to it, just as you can call someone up and talk to them if you know their phone number. Just knowing the name isn't good enough, though. You have to know exactly how to say it. Ask two John Franklin Smiths to say their names for you, and you'll get subtle differences in tone and pronunciation. Each one unique to its owner. Wizards tend to collect names of creatures, spirits, and people like some kind of huge Rolodex. You never know when it will come in handy. The other part of magic you need to know is magic circle theory. Most magic involves a circle of one kind or another. Drawing a circle sets a local limit on what a wizard is trying to do. It helps him refine his magic, focus, and direct it more clearly. It does this by creating a sort of screen defined by the perimeter of the circle that keeps random magical energy from getting past it, containing it within the circle so that it can be used. To make a circle, you draw it on the ground or close hands with a bunch of people or walk about spreading incense or any number of other methods while focusing on your purpose and drawing it in. Then you invest it with a little spark of energy to close the circuit, and it's ready. One of the things that such a circle does, it keeps magical creatures like fairies or even demons from getting past it. Neat, huh? Usually this is used to keep them out. It's a bit trickier to set up a circle to keep them in. That's where the blood comes into play. With blood comes power. If you take in some sort of some if you take in some of someone else's blood, there's a metaphysical significance to it, a sort of energy. It's minuscule if you aren't trying to really get energy it's minuscule if you aren't really trying to get energy that way, the way vampires do. But it's enough to close a circle. Now you know how it's done, but I don't recommend that you try it at home. You don't know what to do when something goes wrong. You run like hell. I retreated to the trees and called the name of the particular fairy I wanted. It was a rolling series of syllables, quite beautiful, really, especially since the fairy went by the name of Toot Toot every time I had encountered him before. I pushed my will out along with the name just to make it a call, something that would be subtle enough to make him wander this way of his own accord, or at least that was the theory. What was his name? Please. Do you think wizards just give that information like that away? You don't know what I went through to get it. About 10 minutes later, Toot came flickering in over the water of Lake Michigan. First, I mistook him for a reflection of the moon on the side of the softly rolling waves of the lake. Toot was maybe 6 inches tall. He had silver dragonfly wings spreading from his back in the pale, beautiful, tiny humanoid form that echoed the splendor of the Fey Lords. A silver nimbus of ambient light surrounded him. His hair was a shaggy, silken little mane, like a bird of paradise's plumes, and was a pale magenta. Toot loved bread and milk and honey, a common vice of the lesser Fae. They aren't usually willing to take on a nest of bees to get to the honey, and then there's been real dearth of milk in the Never Never since high-tech dairy farms took over most of the industry. Needless to say, they don't grow their own wheat, harvest it, thresh it, and then mill it into flour to make bread either. Toot alighted on the ground with caution, scanning around the trees. He didn't see me. I saw him wipe at his mouth and walk in a slow circle around the miniature dining set, one hand rubbing greedily at his stomach. Once he took the bread and closed the circle, I would be able to bargain information for his release. Toot was a lesser spirit in the area, sort of a dock worker of the Never Never. If anyone had seen anything of Victor Sells, Toot would have, or would know someone who had. Toot dithered for a while, fluttering back and forth around the meal, but slowly getting closer. Feathers and honey, moths and flame. Toot had fallen for this several times before, and it wasn't in the nature of the Fae to keep memories for very long or to change their essential natures. All the same, I held my breath. The fairy finally hunkered down, picked up the bread, and dipped it in honey and greedily gobbled it down. The circle closed with a little snap that occurred just at the edge of my hearing. Its effect on Toot was immediate. He screamed a shrill little scream like a trapped rabbit and took off toward the lake in a buzzing flurry of wings. At the perimeter of the circle, he smacked into something as solid as a brick wall, and a little puff of silver motes exploded out from in the cloud. Toot grunted and fell into his fairy ass on the earth. "I should have known!" he exclaimed as I approached from the trees. His voice was high-pitched, but more like a little kid's than the exaggerated kind of fairy voices I've heard in cartoons. "Now I remember where I've seen those places before, you ugly, sneaking, hair-headed, big-nosed, flat-footed mortal worm." "Hiya, Toot," I told him. "Do you remember our deal from last time, or do I need to go over it again?" Toot glared defiantly up at me and stomped his foot on the ground. More silver fairy dust puffed out from the impact. "Release me," he demanded, "or I will tell the queen." "If I don't release you," I pointed out, "you can't tell the queen. And you know just as well as I do what she would say about any dewdrop fairy who was silly enough to get himself caught with the lure of bread and milk and honey." Toot crossed his arms defiantly over his chest. "I warn you, mortal, release me now, or you will feel the awful, terrible, irresistible might of the fairy magic. I will knock your teeth from your head, take your eyes from their sockets, fill your mouth with dung, and your ears with worms." "Hit me with your best shot," I told him. "After that, we can talk about what you need to do to get out of the circle." I had called his bluff. I always did, but he probably wouldn't remember the details very well. If you live a few hundred years, you tend to forget the little things. Toot sulked and kicked up a little spray of dirt with one tiny foot. "You could at least pretend to be afraid, Harry." "Sorry, Toot, I don't have the time." Time, Toot complained. "Isn't that all you mortals can ever think about? Everyone's complaining about time. The whole city rushes left and right, screaming about being late and honking horns. You people used to have it right, you know." I bore the lecture with good nature. Toot could never keep his mind on the same subject long enough to be really trying in any case. Basically, he just verified that fairies have ADHD. Why, I remember the folk who lived here before you pale, wheezy guys came in, and then never complained about ulcers or. Toots' eyes wandered to the bread, milk, and honey again and glinted. He sauntered that way, then snatched the remaining bread, sopping up all the honey with it, eating it with greedy bird-like motions. This is good stuff, Harry. You know that funny stuff in that we get sometimes. Preservatives? I said. Whatever. Toot drank down the milk, too, at a long pull, and then promptly fell down on his back, patting his rounded tummy. All right, he said. Now, let me out. Not yet, Toot. I need something first. Toot scowled up at me. You wizards always needing something. I really could do the thing with the dung, you know. He stood, folded his arms haughtily over his chest, looking up at me as though I weren't a dozen times taller than he. Very well, he said, his tone lofty. I have deigned to grant you a single request of some small nature for the generous gift of your cuisine. I worked to keep a straight face. That's very kind of you. Toot sniffed and somehow managed to look down his little pug nose at me. It is my nature to be both benevolent and wise. I nodded as though this were a very great wisdom. Uh-huh. Look, Toot. I need to know if you were around this place for the past few nights and know someone who was. I'm looking for someone, and maybe he came here. And if I tell you, Toot said, I take it you'll disassemble this circle, which has, by some odd coincidence, no doubt made its way around me. It would only be reasonable, I said with all seriousness. Toot seemed to consider it as though he might be inclined not to cooperate, then nodded. Very well. You will have the information you wish. Release me. I narrowed my eyes. Are you sure? Do you promise? Toot stamped his foot again, scattering more silver dust motes. Harry, you're ruining the drama. I folded my arms. I want to hear you promise. Toot threw up his hands. Fine, fine, fine. I promise, I promise, I promise. I'll dig up what you want to know. He started to buzz about the circle in great agitation, wings lifting him easily into the air. Let me out! Let me out! A promise thrice made is as close to the absolute truth as you can get from a fairy. I went quickly to the circle and scuffed over the line I'd drawn in the dirt with my foot, willing the circle to part. It did with a little hiss of released energy. Toot streaked out over Lake Michigan's waters again, a miniature silver comet, and vanished in a twinkling, just like Santa Claus. Though I should say that Santa's much bigger and more powerful fairy than Toot, and I don't know his true name anyway. You would never see me trying to nab St. Nick in a magic circle, even if I did. I don't think anyone has stones that big. I waited around walking about to keep from falling asleep. If I did that, Toot would be perfectly within his rights as a fairy to fulfill his promise of telling me the information while I was sleeping. And given that I just now captured and humiliated him, he'd probably do something to even the scales. 2 weeks from now, he wouldn't even remember it. But if I let him have a free shot at me tonight, I might wake up with an ass's head, and I didn't think that would be good for business. So I paced and I waited. Toot usually took about half an hour to round up what it was I wanted to know. Sure enough, half an hour later, he came sparkling back in and buzzed around my head, drizzling fairy dust from his blurring wings at my eyes. Ha, Harry, he said, I did it. What did you find out, Toot? Yes, I snorted. No. Hey, Thorn. Thank you for the alert. I appreciate it. Oh, come on, just look, guess. I scowled, tired and irritated, and tried not to let it show. Toot couldn't help but me what he was. Toot, it's late. You promised to tell me. No fun at all, he complained. No wonder you can't get a date unless someone wants to know something from you. I blinked at him and he chortled in glee. Ha! I love it when we're watching you, Harry Dresden. And now that was disconcerting. I had a sudden image of a dozen fairy voyeurs lingering around my apartment's windows and peering inside. I'd have to take precautions to make sure they couldn't do that. Not that I was afraid of them or anything, just in case. Just tell me, Toot, I sighed. Incoming! He shrilled, and I held out my hand, fingers flat and palm up. He alighted in the center of my palm. I could barely feel his weight, but sensed the aura around him ran through my skin like a tiny electric current. He stared fearlessly at my eyes. The Fae have no souls to gaze upon, and they could not fathom a mortal soul, even if they could see it. Okay, Toot said. I talked to Blue Blossom, who talked to Red Nose, who talked to Mago Aspens, who said that Golden Eyes said that he was riding the pizza car when it came here last night. Toot thrust out his chest proudly. Pizza car? I asked, bewildered. Pizza! Toot cried jubilant. Pizza, pizza, pizza! His wings fluttered again. I tried to blink the damn fairy dust out of my eyes before I started sneezing. Fairies like pizza? I asked. Oh, Harry, Toot said breathlessly. Haven't you ever had pizza before? Of course I have, I said. Toot looked wounded. And you didn't share? Look, maybe I can bring you guys some pizza sometime soon to thank you for your help. Toot leapt back in glee, hopping from one fingertip to the other. Yes, wait until I tell them. We'll see who laughs at Toot Toot next time. Toot, I said, trying to calm him. Did he say anything else? Toot tittered, his expression sly and suggestive. He said that they were mortal sporting and that they needed pizza to regain their strength. Which delivery place, Toot? The fairy blinked and stared at me as though I were hopelessly stupid. Harry, the pizza truck! And then he darted off skyward, vanishing into the trees above. I sighed and nodded. Toot wouldn't know the difference between Domino's and Pizza Hut. He had no frame of reference and couldn't read. Most fairies were studiously averse to print. So I had two pieces of information. One, someone had ordered pizza to be delivered here, and that meant two things. First, that someone was here last night. Second, that someone had seen them and talked to them. Maybe I could track down the pizza driver and ask if he had seen Victor Sells. The second piece of information had been Toot's reference to sporting. Fairies didn't think too much of mortals' idea of sporting unless there was a lot of nudity and lust involved. They had a penchant for shadowing naked teenagers and playing tricks on them, so Victor had been here with a lover of some kind for there to be any sport going on. I was beginning to think that Monica Sells was in denial. Her husband wasn't wandering around learning to be a sorcerer, spooky scorpion talismans notwithstanding. He was lurking about his love nest with a girlfriend like any other husband bored with a timid and domestic wife might do under pressure. It wasn't admirable, but I could understand the motivations that could cause it. The only problem was going to be tell Monica. I had a feeling that she wasn't going to want to listen to what I found out. I picked up the little plate and bowl and cup and put them back in my black nylon backpack along with the silver knife. My legs ached from too much walking and standing about. I was looking forward to going home and getting some sleep. The man with the naked sword in his hands appeared out of the darkness without a warning, rustle of sound, or whiff of magic to announce his presence. He was tall, like me, but broad and heavy-chested, and carried his weight with a ponderous sort of dignity. Perhaps 50 years old, the listless brown hair going gray in uneven patches. He wore a long black coat, a lot like mine, but without the mantle, and his jacket and pants, too, were done in dark colors, charcoal and deep blue. His shirt was crisp, pure white, the color you'd only see with tuxedos. His eyes were gray, touched with the crow's feet at the corners, and dangerous. Moonlight glinted off those eyes in the same shade it did from the brighter silver of the sword's blade. He began to walk deliberately toward me, speaking in a quiet voice as he did. Harry Blackstone, Copperfield, Dresden. Irresponsible use of true names for summoning and binding others to your will violates the fourth law of magic, the man intoned. I remind you that you are under the doom of Damocles. No further violations of the laws will be tolerated. The sentence for further violation is death by the sword to be carried out at once. Chapter 7. Have you ever been approached by a grim-looking man carrying a naked sword with a blade about 10 miles long in his hand in the middle of the night beneath the stars of the shores of Lake Michigan? If you have, seek professional help. If you have not, then believe you me, it could scare the bejesus out of you. I took in a quick breath and had to work not to put it into a quasi-Latin phrase on the exhale, one that would have set the man's body on fire and reduced him to a mound of ashes. I react badly to fear. I don't usually have the good sense to run or hide. I just try to smash whatever it is that's making me afraid. Yes! Now you understand why I love Harry so much. He and I have that in common. We do have an ad break starting in less than 5 minutes. Just fair warning. I will pause the reading when it happens. It's a primitive sort of thing and one I don't question too much. But reflex-based murder seems a tad extreme, so rather than setting him on fire, I nodded instead. Evening, Morgan, you know as well as I do that those laws apply to mortals, not fairies, especially for something as trivial as I just did, and I didn't break the fourth law. He had choice whether to take my deal or not. Morgan's soury, leathery face turned a bit more sour, the lines at the corners of his mouth stretching and becoming deeper. That's a technicality, Dresden. A pair of them. His hands, broad and strong, resettled their grip upon the sword he held. His unevenly graying hair was tied into a ponytail at the back, like Sean Connery's in some of his movies, except that Morgan's face was too pinched and thin to pull off the look. Your point being? I did my best to keep from looking nervous or impressed. Truth be told, I was both. Morgan was my warden, assigned to me by the White Council to make sure I didn't bend or break any of the laws of magic. He hung about and spied on me mostly and usually came sniffing around after I cast a spell of some kind. I'd be damned if I was going to let the White Council's guard dog see any fear out of me. Besides, he would take it as a sign of guilt and the true spirit of paranoid fanatics everywhere. So all I had to do was keep a straight face and get out before my weariness made me slip up or do or say something that he could use against me. Morgan was one of the deadliest evocators in the world. He wasn't bright enough to question his loyalties to the council, and he could do quick and dirty magic like few others could. Quick and dirty enough to rip the hearts out of Tommy, Tom, and Jennifer Stanton's chest, in fact, if he wanted to. My point, he said, scowling, is that it's my assigned duty to monitor your use of power and to see to it that you do not abuse it. On a missing persons case, I said, all I did was call up a dewdrop fairy to get some information. Come on, Morgan. Everybody calls up fairies now and then. There's no harm in that. It's not as though I'm mind controlling the things, just leaning on them a little. Technicality, Morgan growled. I stuck out my chin at him belligerently. We were of a height, though he outweighed me by 100 pounds. I could pick better people to antagonize, but he'd really gotten under my skin. A technicality I'm prepared to hide wildly behind. So unless you want to convene a meeting of the council to call me on it, we can just drop the discussion right here. I'm pretty sure it'll only take them about 2 days to cancel all their plans, make travel arrangements, and then get here. I can put you up until then. I mean, you'd be dragging a bunch of really crotchety old men away from their experiments and things for nothing. But if you really think it's necessary, Morgan scowled at me. No, it isn't worth it. He opened his dark trench coat, slid the sword away into its scabbard. I relaxed a little. The sword wasn't the most dangerous thing about him, not by a long shot, but it was a symbol of the authority given to him by the White Council. And if rumors were true, it was enchanted to cut through the magical spells of anyone resisting him. I didn't want things to ever go far enough for me to find out if the rumors were true. I'm glad we agree about something, I said. Nice seeing you again. I started to walk past him. Morgan put one of those big hands on my arm as I went by, and his fingers closed around it. I'm not finished with you, Dresden. I didn't dare mess around with Morgan when he was acting in his role as warden of the White Council, but he wasn't wearing that hat now. Once he had put the sword away, he was acting on his own without any more official authority than any other man, or at least that was the technical truth. Morgan was big on technicalities. He had scared the heck out of me and annoyed the heck out of me in rapid succession. Now he was trying to bully me. I hate bullies. So I took a calculated risk, used my free hand, and hit him as hard as I could in the mouth. I think the blow startled him more than anything. He took a step back, letting go of my arm in surprise, and just blinked at me. He put one hand to his mouth, and when he drew his fingers away, there was blood on them. I planted my feet and faced him without meeting his eyes. Don't touch me! Morgan continued to stare at me, and then I saw anger creep over his face, set his jaw, make his veins in his temples stand out. How dare you, he said. How dare you strike me? It wasn't so hard. I said, if you've got council business with me, I'm willing to give you whatever respect is your due. When you come on strong to me on personal business, I don't have to put up with it. I saw the steam coming out of his ears as he mulled it over. He looked for a reason to come after me and realized he didn't have one, according to the laws. He wasn't too bright. Did I mention that already? And he was a big one for following the laws. You're a fool, Dresden, he sputtered finally. An arrogant little fool. Probably, I told him. I tense myself to move quickly if necessary. I may not like to run away from what scares me, but I try not to fight hopeless battles either. Morgan had me by years of experience and 100 pounds at least. There was no law of magic that protected me from him and his fist either, and if that occurred to him, he might decide to do something about it. That punch I landed had been lucky coming out of the blue. I wouldn't get away with it again. All right. I am going to pause for the cause for a minute and a half. I'm going to take this as a drink break. I hope you are all enjoying the pages that I am reading. Take a quick. I always like to stretch and roll my shoulders during these moments. That's why I don't mind the ad breaks so much. I just put them off as long as I can, so there's no interruption. Y'all are going to find that Morgan's a bit of a prick. It's what happens when you give somebody who's very zealous a little bit of power. But here's the thing, and I'm not going to give any spoilers, but while he is a prick, he is a honest prick and a prick with a purpose. So he's actually a better guy than you think. He just comes across as being an asshole. And there's nothing wrong with that. You always got to have that one person in your life that always wants to keep you on the straight and narrow. And sometimes they can be a bit of a prick when they do it. So, all right. And welcome back from the ad break for those of you that were plagued by the ads. By the way, just as a friendly reminder, there is such a thing as Prime Gaming, and it does come with a free sub. So, and not the kind you eat, sadly. So, if you would like to, if you ever want to support a streamer, not necessarily me, a free sub is always there for you once per month to give to your favorite streamer. I'm not doing any endorsements whatsoever for anything else. Oh, someone killed 2 people with sorcery last night, Dresden. I think it was you. And when I find out how you did it and can trace it back to you, don't think you're going to live long enough to cast the same spell at me. Morgan swiped at the blood with one long fist. It was my turn to blink. I tried to shift mental gears to keep up with the change of subject. Morgan thought I was the killer, and since Morgan didn't do too much of his own thinking, that meant that the White Council thought I was the killer. Holy shit. Of course, it made sense from Morgan's narrow and single-minded point of view. A wizard had killed someone, I was a wizard, and who had already been convicted of killing another with magic, even if the self-defense clause had kept me from being executed. Cops look for people who had already committed crimes before they start looking for other culprits. Morgan was just another kind of cop as far as I was concerned. And as far as he was concerned, I was just one more dangerous con. You're not serious, I told him. You think I did it? He sneered at me. His voice was contemptuous, confident, and seized with absolute conviction. Don't try to hide it, Dresden. I'm sure you think you're clever enough to come up with something innovative that we hidebound old men won't be able to trace. But you're wrong. We'll determine how you did it, and we'll follow it back to you. And when we do, I'll be there to make sure you never hurt anyone again. Knock yourself out, I told him. It was really hard to keep my voice as blithe as I wanted it to sound. I didn't do it, but I'm helping the police find the man who did. The police? Morgan asked and narrowed his eyes as though gauging my expression. As if they could have any authority on this matter. They won't do you any good, even if you do set someone up to take the fall for you under mortal law. The White Council will still see that justice is done. His eyes glittered fanatic bright under the stars. Whatever. Look. If you find out something about the killer, anything that could help the cops out, would you give me a call? Morgan looked at me like with profound distaste. You asked me to warn you when you're closing in on you, Dresden? You're young, but I never thought you stupid. I bit back the obvious comment that leapt to mine. Morgan was on the edge of outrage already. If I had realized how rabid he was to catch me slipping, I wouldn't have added more fuel to his fire by hitting him in the mouth. Okay, I probably still would have hit him in the mouth, but I wouldn't have done it quite so hard. Good night, Morgan, I told him. I started to walk away again before I could let my mouth get me into more trouble. He moved faster than I would have given a man his age credit for. His fist went across my jaw at approximately 1,000,000 miles an hour, and I spun down to the dirt like a string-cut puppet. For several long moments, I was unable to do anything at all, even breathe. Morgan loomed over me. We'll be watching you, Dresden. He turned and started walking away, the shadows of the evening quickly swallowing up his black coat. His voice drifted back to me. We'll find out what really happened. I didn't dare spat out a snappy comeback. I felt my jaw with my fingers and made sure it wasn't broken before I stood up and walked back to the Beetle, my legs feeling loose and watery. I fervently hoped that Morgan would find out what really happened. It would keep the White Council from executing me for breaking the first law, for one thing. I could feel his eyes on my back all the way to the Beetle. Damn that Morgan. He didn't have to take quite so much pleasure in being assigned to spy on me. I had a sinking feeling that anywhere I went over the next few days, he would be likely to turn up watching. He was like this big cartoon tomcat waiting outside the mouse hole for the little mouse to stick its nose out so he could smash it flat with one big paw. I was feeling a lot like that little mouse. I let that analogy cheer me up a bit. The cartoon cat always seemed to get the short end of the stick in the final analysis. Maybe Morgan would too. Part of the problem was that seeing Morgan always brought up too many memories of my angsty teenage days. That was when I started to learn magic. When my mentor had tried to seduce me into black wizardry and when he attempted to kill me when he failed. I killed him instead, mostly by luck, but he was just as dead, and I'd done it with sorcery. I broke the first law of magic, thou shalt not kill. There's only one sentence if someone is found guilty, and one sword that they use to carry it out. The White Council commuted the death sentence because tradition demands that a wizard can resort to the use of deadly force if he is defending his own life or the lives of the defenseless, and my claim that I'd been attacked first could not be contested by my master's corpse. So instead, they stuck me out on some kind of accelerated probation, one strike, and I was out. There were some wizards who thought that the judgment against me was ludicrous injustice. I happened to be one of them, but my vote didn't really count. And others who thought I should have been executed regardless of extenuating circumstances. Morgan belonged to that latter group, just my luck. I was feeling more than a bit surly at the entire White Council, benevolent intentions aside. I guess it was only made sense that they'd suspect me, and God knows that I've been a thorn in their side, flying in the face of tradition by practicing my art openly. There were plenty of people on the council who might well want me dead. I would have started being more careful. I rolled down the Beatles' windows on the way back to Chicago to help me stay awake. I was exhausted, but my mind was racing around like a hamster on an exercise wheel, working furiously, getting nowhere. The irony was thick enough to make my tongue curl. The White Council suspected me of the killings, and if no other suspect came forward, I was going to take the rap. Murphy's investigation had just become very, very important to me, but to pursue the investigation, I would have to try to figure out how the killer had pulled off the spell, and to do that, I would have to indulge in highly questionable research that would probably be enough to get me a death sentence all by itself. Catch-22. If I had any respect at all for Morgan's intelligence, I would have suspected him of pulling off the killings himself and setting me up to take the blame. But that just didn't track. Morgan might twist and bend the rules to get what he saw as justice, but he'd never blatantly violate them. But if not Morgan, then who could have done it? There just weren't all that many people who could get enough power into that kind of spell to make it work, unless there was some flaw in the quasi-physics that governed magic that let hearts explode more easily than other things, and I wouldn't know that until I had pursued the forbidden research. Bianca would have more information on who might have done it. She had to. I had already planned on talking to the vampiress, but Morgan's visit had made it a necessity rather than merely a priority. Murphy was not going to be thrilled that I was thrusting myself into her side of this investigation, but better, because White Council business was all hush-hush to non-wizards. I wouldn't be able to explain to her why I was doing it. Further joy. You know, sometimes I think someone up there really hates me. Chapter 8. By the time I got home, it was after 2 o'clock in the morning. The clock in the building didn't work, of course, but I made a pretty good guess from the position of the stars and moon. I was strung out, weary, and my nerves were stretched as tight as guitar strings. I didn't think sleep was likely, so I decided to do a little alchemy to help me unwind. I mean, don't we all do that, you know? I've often wished that I had some suave and socially acceptable hobby that I could fall back on times like this, play the violin, or was it a viola, like Sherlock Holmes, or maybe twiddle away on the pipe organ like the Disney version of Captain Nemo. But I don't. I'm sort of the arcane equivalent of a classic computer geek. I do magic in one form or another, and that's pretty much it. I really need to get a life one of these days. I live in a basement apartment beneath a big roomy old house that has been divided up into lots of different apartments. Gee, that sounds familiar. The basement and sub-basement below it are both mine, which are sort of neat. I'm the only tenant living on 2 floors, and my rent is cheaper than all the people who have whole windows. The house is full of creaks and sighs and settling boards, and time and lives have worn their impression into the wood and brick. I can hear all the sounds, all the character of the place, above and around me and all through the night. It's an old place, but it sings in the darkness and is, in its own quirky little way, alive. It's a home. Mr. was waiting for me at the bottom of the stairs that led down to the apartment's front door. Mr. is an enormous gray cat. I mean enormous. There are dogs smaller than Mr. He weighs in at just over 30 pounds. Yeah, by Cuddy. And there isn't an undue amount of fat on his frame. I think maybe his father was a wildcat or a lynx or something. I had found Mr. in a garbage can about 3 years before, a mewling kitten. It was tail torn off by a dog or a car. I was never sure which. But Mr. hated both and would attack either or flee from them on sight. Sounds like he might be one of those Maine Coons that I'm always seeing on TikTok. That's what it sounds like. Mr. had recovered his dignity over the next few months and shortly became to believe that he was the apartment's tenant, and I was someone he barely tolerated to share the space with him. Gee, I wonder who that's like. Uh, Right now, he looked up and roared at me in an annoyed tone. I thought you had a hot date, I told him. He sauntered over me and rammed one shoulder playfully against my knee. I wavered, recovered my balance, and unlocked the door. Mr., as is just due, entered before I did. My apartment is a studio, one not too large room with a kitchenette in the corner, fireplace to one side. There's a door that leads to the other room, my bedroom and bathroom. And then there's the hinged door on the floor that goes down to the sub-basement where I keep my lab. I've got things pretty heavily textured. There are multiple carpets on the floor, tapestries on the walls, a collection of knickknacks and oddities on every available surface. My staff and my sword cane are in the corner. God, I wish I had one of those. And several bulging bookshelves, which I really will organize one day. Mr. went to a spot before the fireplace and demanded that it be made warm. I obliged him with a fire and lit a lamp as well. Oh, I have lights and so on, but they foul up so often that it almost isn't worth turning them on. And I'm not even about to take chances with the gas heater. I stick with the simple things, the fireplace and my candles and lamps. I have a special charcoal stove and a vent to take most of the smoke out, though the whole place smells a little of wood smoke and charcoal no matter what I do. I took off my duster and got my heavy flannel robe before I went down to the lab. See, that's why wizards wear robes. I swear to you, it's just too damn cold in the lab to go without one. I clambered down the ladder to the lab, carrying my candle with me and lit a few lamps, a pair of burners, and a kerosene heater in the corner. Yeah, it has nothing to do with being, mystic or anything like that. You're just goddamn cold. The lights came up and revealed a long table in the center of the room, other tables against three of the walls around it, and a clear space on one end of the room where a brass circle had been laid out on the floor and fastened into the cement with the U-shaped bolts. Shelves over the tables were crowded with empty cages, boxes, Tupperware jars, cans, containers of all descriptions, a pair of unusual antlers, a couple of fur pelts, several musty old books, and a long row of notebooks filled with my own cramped writing and a bleached white human skull. Now, I love this bit. Bob, I said. I started clearing the space off the center table, dumping boxes and grocery sacks and plastic tubs all over the brass circle on the floor. I needed room to work. Bob, wake up. There was a moment of silence while I started getting some things down from the shelves. Bob, I said louder, come on, lazy bones. A pair of lights came on in the empty sockets of the skull, oranges flickering like candle flames. It isn't enough, the skull said, that I have to wake up. I have to wake up to bad puns. What is it about you that you have to make the bad puns? I quit whining, I told him cheerfully. We've got work to do. Bob the skull grumbled something in Old French, I think, though I got lost when he got to the anatomical improbabilities of bullfrogs. He yawned and his bony teeth rattled when his mouth clicked and closed again. Bob really wasn't a human skull. He was a spirit of air, sort of like a fairy, but different. He made his residence inside the skull that had been prepared for him several hundred years ago, and it was his job to remember things for obvious reasons. I can't use a computer to store information and keep track of the slowly changing laws of quasi-physics. That's why I had Bob. He had worked with dozens of wizards over the years, and it had given him a vast repertoire of knowledge, that and a really cocky attitude. Plus, wizards, he mumbled. I can't sleep, so we're going to make a couple of potions. Sound good? Like I have a choice, Bob said. What's the occasion? I brought Bob up to speed on what had happened that day. He whistled No Easy Trick Without Lips and said, sounds sticky. Pretty sticky, I agreed. Tell you what, he said. Let me out for a ride, and I will tell you how to get out of it. That made me wary. Bob, I let you out once, remember? He nodded dreamily, scraping bone on wood. The sorority house, I remember. I snorted and started some water boiling over one of the burners. You're supposed to be a spirit of intellect. I don't understand why you're so obsessed with sex. And apparently he doesn't know many nerds. Bob's voice got defensive. It's an academic interest, Harry. Oh, yeah? Well, maybe I don't think it's fair to let your academia go peeping in other people's houses. Wait a minute. My academia doesn't just peep. I held up a hand. Save it. I don't want to hear it. He grunted. You're trivializing what getting out for a bit means to me, Harry. You're insulting my masculinity. Bob, I said, "You're a skull. You don't have any masculinity to insult." "Oh, yeah?" Bob chimes in. "Pot kettle black, Harry. Have you gotten a date yet, huh? Most men have something better to do in the middle of the night than play with their chemistry sets." As a matter of fact, I told him I'm set up for Saturday night. Bob's eyes fluttered from orange to red. "Ooh," he there. "Is she pretty?" "Dark skin," I said. "Dark hair, dark eyes, legs to die for, smart, sexy as hell." That's what kind of sounds like. Never mind. Bob chortled. "Think she'd like to see the lab?" "Get your mind out of the gutter." "No, seriously," Bob said. "If she's so great, what's she doing with you? You aren't exactly Sir Gawain, you know." It's my turn to get defensive. "She likes me," I said. "Is that such a shock?" "Harry," Bob drawled, his eyelights flickering smugly. "What do you know about what you know about women I could juggle?" I stared at Bob for a moment and realized with a somewhat sinking feeling that Skull was probably right. Not that I would admit that to him, not in a million years, but he was. "We're going to make an escape potion," I told him. "I don't want to be all night, so can we get to work?" I can only remember about half the recipe." "There's always room to make two if you're making one, Harry. You knew that." That much was true. The process of mixing up an alchemical potion is largely stirring, simmering, and waiting. You can always get another one going and alternate between them. Sometimes you can do three, but that's pushing it. "Okay, so we'll make a copy." "Oh, come on," Bob said, chided me. "That's dull. You should stretch yourself. Try something new." "Like what?" Bob's eye sockets twinkled cheerfully. "A love potion, Harry. If you won't let me, at least let me do that. Spirits knows you could use it." And "No," I said firmly. "No way. No love potion." "Fine." I said, "No love potion. No escape potion either." "Bob," I said warningly. Bob's eyes winked out. I growled. I was tired and cranky, and under the best of circumstances, I'm not exactly a type A personality. I stalked over, picked up Bob by the jaws, and shook him. "Hey!" I shouted. "Bob, you come out of there, or I'm going to take this skull and throw it down the deepest well I can find. I swear to you, I'll put you somewhere where no one can ever let you out again." Bob's eyes winked on for a moment. "No, you won't. I'm far too valuable." And then they winked out again. I gritted my teeth and tried not to smash the skull into little pieces on the floor. I took deep breaths, summoning years of wizardly training and control not to throw a tantrum and break the nice spirit into little pieces. Instead, I put the skull back on the shelf and counted slowly to 30. Could I make the potion by myself? I probably could, but I had a sinking feeling that it might not have precisely the effects I wanted. Potions were a tricky business and a lot more relied upon precise details than upon intent. Like in spells, and just because I made a love potion didn't mean I had to use it, right? It would only be good for a couple of days in any case, surely not through the weekend. And how much trouble could it cause? I struggled to rationalize the action. It would appease Bob and give him some kind of vicarious thrill. Love potions were about the cheapest things in the world to make, so it wouldn't cost me too much. And I thought if Susan should ask me for some kind of demonstration of magic, as she always did, I could always no. That would be too much. That would be like admitting I couldn't get a woman to like me on my own, and it would be unfair taking advantage of the woman. What I wanted was the escape potion. I might need it at Bianca's place, and I could always use it if worst came to worst to make a getaway from Morgan and the White Council. I would feel a lot better if I had the escape potion. "Okay, Bob, fine. You win. We'll do them both, all right?" Bob's eyelights came up warily. "You sure? You'll do the love potion, just like I say?" "Don't I always make potions like you say, Bob?" "What about that diet potion you tried?" "Okay, that one was a mistake. And the anti-gravity potion, remember that? We fixed the floor. It was no big deal." "And fine, I growled. "You don't have to rub it in. Now cough up the recipes." Bob did so in fine humor, and for the next 2 hours we made potions. Potions are all made pretty much the same way. First you need a base to form the essential liquid content, then something to engage each of the senses, then something for the mind and something for the spirit. 8 ingredients all in all, and they are different for each and every potion and for each person who makes them. Bob had centuries of experience, and he could extrapolate the most successful components for a given person to make into a potion. He was right about being an invaluable resource. I had never even heard of a spirit with Bob's experience, and I was lucky to have him. That didn't mean I didn't want to crack that skull of his from time to time, though. The escape potion was made in a base of 8 ounces of Jolt Cola. We added a drop of motor oil for the smell of it and cut a bird's feather into tiny shavings for the tactile value. 3 ounces of chocolate-covered espresso beans ground into powder went into the next. Then a shredded bus ticket I'd never used for the mind and a small chain which I broke and dropped in for the heart. I unfolded a clean white cloth there where I had a flickering shadow stored for just such an occasion and tossed it into the brew. Then I opened up a glass jar where I kept my mouse scampers and tapped the sound out into the beaker where the potion was brewing. You sure this is going to work, Bob? I said. Always. That's a super recipe, though. Smells terrible. Bob's lights twinkled. They usually do. What's it doing? Is this the super speed one or the teleportation version? Bob coughed. A little of both, actually. Drink it and you'll be in the wind. You'll be the wind for a few minutes. The wind? I eyed him. I haven't heard of that one before, Bob. I am an air spirit after all, Bob told me. This worked fine, trust me. I grumbled and set the first potion to simmering, then started on the next one. I hesitated after Bob told me the first ingredient. Tequila? I asked him. Skeptically, are you sure on that one? I thought the base for a love potion was supposed to be champagne. Champagne, tequila, what's the difference? So long as it'll lower her inhibitions? Bob said, I'm thinking this is going to get us a sleazier result. Hey, Bob protested, who's the memory spirit here, me or you? Well, who's got all the experience with women here, me or you? Bob, Harry, Bob lectured me. I was seducing shepherdesses when you weren't a twinkle in your great-grandsister's eyes. I think I know what I'm doing. I sighed, too tired to argue with him. Okay, sheesh, tequila. I got down the bottle, measured 8 ounces into the beaker, and glanced up at the skull. Right, now 3 ounces of dark chocolate. Chocolate? I demanded. Chicks are into chocolate, Harry. I muttered, more interested in finishing than anything else, and measured out the ingredients. I did the same with a drop of perfume, some name-brand imitation that I liked, an ounce of shredded lace, and the last sigh at the bottom of a glass jar. I added some candlelight to the mix, and it took on a rosy golden glow. Great, Bob said. That's just right. Okay, now we add the ashes of a passionate love letter. I blinked at the skull. Bob, I'm fresh out of those. Bob snorted. How did I guess? Look on the shelf behind me. I did, and found a pair of romance novels. Their covers filled with impossibly delightful flesh. Where'd you get those? My last trip out, Bob answered blithely. Page 174 of the paragraph starts with her milky white breath. Now tear that page out and burn it and add those ashes in. I choked. That will work? Hey, women eat these things up. Trust me. Fine. I decided. This is the spirit ingredient? Uh-huh, Bob said. He was rocking back and forth on his jawbones in excitement. Now, just a teaspoon of powdered diamond and we're done. Diamonds? I don't have any diamonds, Bob. I figured you're cheap, and that's why women don't like you. Look, just tear up a 50 into real little pieces and put that in. A $50 bill? I demanded. Money, Bob opined. Very sexy. I muttered and got the remaining 50 out of my pocket, shredding it and tossing it to complete the potion. The next step was where the effort came in. Once all the ingredients are mixed together, you have to force enough energy through them to activate them. It isn't the actual physical ingredients that are important. It's the meaning they carry, too, the significance that they have for the person making the potion and for those who will be using it. The energy from magic comes from a lot of places. It can come from a special place, usually from some spectacular natural site like Mount St. Helens or Old Faithful, from a focus of some kind like Stonehenge is on a large scale. Sometimes it's just pure mental effort, raw willpower. Sometimes it's emotions and feelings. All of them are visible, tender to be used for the proverbial fire. I had a lot of worry to use to feel the magic, and a lot of annoyance and one hell of a lot of stubbornness. I remember the requisite quasi-Latin litany over the potions over and over, feeling a kind of resistance building, and just out of the range of the physical senses, but there nonetheless. I gathered up all my worry and anger and stubbornness and threw them all at the resistance in one big ball, shaping them with the strength and tone of my words. The magic left me in a sudden wave like a pitcher abruptly emptied out. I love this part, Bob said, just as both potions exploded into puffs of greenish smoke and began to froth up over the lips of the beakers. I sagged onto a stool and waited for the potions to fizz down, all the strength gone out of me, the weariness building up like a load of bricks on my shoulders. Once the frothing had settled, I leaned over and poured each potion into its own individual sports bottle with a squeeze top, then labeled the containers with a permanent magic marker very clearly. I don't take chances in getting potions mixed up anymore. Ever since that invisibility hair tonic incident from when I was trying to grow out a decent beard. You won't regret this, Harry, Bob assured me. That's the best potion I've ever made. I made it, not you. I groaned. I really was exhausted now, way too tired to let petty concerns like possible execution keep me from bed. Sure, Bob agreed. Whatever, Harry. I went around the room, putting out all the fires and the kerosene heater, and then climbed the ladder back to the basement without saying good night. Bob was chortling happily to himself as I did. I stumbled to my bed and fell into it. Mr. always climbs in and goes to sleep draped over my legs. I waited for him, and a few seconds later he showed up, settling down and purring like a miniature outboard motor. I struggled to put together an itinerary for the next couple of days through the haze of exhaustion, talk to the vampire, locate missing husband, avoid the wrath of the White Council, find the killer before he found me. An unpleasant thought, but I decided that I wasn't going to let that bother me either and curled up to go to sleep. Sorry, I'm taking a little bit of a break. I'm thinking I'm about out of tea, so I'll be swapping the water soon. Chapter 9. Friday night, I went to see Bianca the vampiress. I didn't just leap out of bed and go see her, of course. You don't go walk into the proverbial lion's den lightly. You start off with a good breakfast. My breakfast took place around 3 in the afternoon. When I woke up to hear my phone ringing, I had to get out of bed and pad into the main room to answer it. I grumbled. Dresden, Murphy said, what can you tell me? Murphy sounded stressed. Her voice had that distinct edge that she got whenever she was nervous, and it rankled me like fingernails scraping on bones. The investigation into Tommy Tom's murder must not be going well. Nothing yet, I said. Then I lied to her a little. I was up most of the night working, but nothing to show yet. She answered me with a swear word. That's not good enough, Harry. I need answers, and I need them yesterday. I'll get it as quick as I can. Get to it faster, she snarled. She was angry, not that this was unusual for Murphy, but told me that something else was going on. Some people panic when things get rough. Harry, some people fall apart. Murphy got pissed. Commissioner riding your back again? City Police Commissioner Howard Fairweather used Murphy and her team as scapegoats for all sorts of unsolvable crimes that he had dumped in her lap. Fairweather was always lurking around trying for an opportunity to make Murphy look bad, as though doing so he could avoid being crucified himself. Like a winged monkey from the Wizard of Oz, kind of makes you wonder who's leaning on him to get things done. Her voice was sour as ripe lemons. I heard her drop an Alka-Seltzer into a glass of liquid. I'm serious, Harry. You get me those answers I need, and you get them to me fast. I need to know if this was sorcery, and if so, how was it done? Who could have done it? Names, places. I need to know everything. It isn't that simple, Then make it simple. How long before you can tell me? I need an estimate for the Commissioner's Investigative Committee in 15 minutes, or I might as well turn in my badge today. I grimaced. If I was able to get something out of Bianca, I might be able to help Murph on the investigation. But if it proved fruitless, I was going to have to spend the entire evening doing nothing productive, and Murphy needed her answers now. Maybe I should have made a state awake potion. Does the committee work weekends? Murphy snorted. Are you kidding? We'll have something by Monday then. You can have it figured out by then? She asked. I don't know how much good it'll do you, even if I can puzzle it out. I hope you've got more to go on than this. I heard her sigh into the phone and drink the fizzy drink. Don't let me down, Harry. Time to change the subject before she pinned me down and smelled me lying. I had no intention of doing the forbidden research if I could find a way out of doing it. No luck with Bianca? Another swear word. The bitch won't talk to me. Ha ha ha. Second. Ta-ta! Titwad. Besides a name like that, you deserve to get banned. Don't start that shit here. Sorry about snipe somebody. Always some motherfucker trying to escape uphill. That bitch won't talk to us, just smiles and nods and blows smoke, makes small talk and crosses her legs. You should have seen Carmichael drooling. Well, it's tough to blame him, maybe. I hear she's cute. Listen, Murph, what if I just... No, Harry, absolutely not. You will not go over to the Velvet Room. You will not talk to that woman. You will not get involved in this. Lieutenant Murphy, I drawled, a little jealous, are we? Don't flatter yourself. You're a civilian in Dresden, and even if you do have your investigator's license, if you get your ass laid out in the hospital or the morgue, it'll be me that'll suffer for it. Murph, I'm touched. I'll touch your head to a brick wall a few times if you cross me on this, Harry. Her voice was sharp, vehement. Hey, wind down, Murph. If you don't want me to go, no problem. Whoops, I lie. She'll be all of that like a troll on a billy goat. You're a lousy liar, Harry. God damn it. I ought to take you down and lock up just to keep you from what? I said loudly into the receiver. Murph, you're breaking up. I can't hear you. Damn phone, call me back. And then I hung up on her. Mr. padded over to me and batted at my leg. He watched me with serious green eyes as I leaned down and unplugged the phone as it started ringing again. Okay, mister, you hungry? I got us breakfast, leftover steak sandwich for him, SpaghettiOs heated on the wood stove for me. I rationed out my last can of Coke, which Mr. craves at least as badly as I do, and by the time I was done eating and drinking and petting, I was awake and thinking again and ready for sundown. Daylight savings time hadn't cut in yet, and dark would fall around 6. I had about 2 hours to get set to go. You might think you know a thing or two about vampires. Maybe some of the stuff you've heard is accurate. Likely it's not. Either way, I wasn't looking forward to the prospects of going into Bianca's lair to demand information from her. I was going to assume things were going to get ugly before all was said and done, just to make sure I didn't get caught with my staff down. Wizardry is all about thinking ahead, just about being prepared. Wizards aren't really superhuman. We just have a leg up on seeing things more clearly than other people and being able to use the extra information we have for our benefit. Hell, the word wizard comes from the same root as wise. We know things. We aren't any stronger or faster than anyone else. We don't even have all that much more going in the mental department, but we're god-awful sneaky, and if we get the chance to get set for something, we can do some impressive things. As a wizard, if you're ready to address a problem, then it's likely you'll be able to come up with something that will let you deal with it. So I got together all the things I thought I might need. I made sure that my cane was polished and ready. I put my silver knife in the sheath that hung just under my left arm. I put the escape potion in its plastic squeeze ball in my duster pocket. I put on my favorite talisman, a silver pentacle on a silver chain. It had been my mother's. My father had passed it down to me, and I put a small folded piece of white cloth in my pocket. I don't know if it's just getting gloomier. I may have to turn the light on. Oh, let me see how long this chapter is. Yeah, it's a good piece. Okay. I had several enchanted items around, or half enchanted items anyway. Carrying out a full enchantment is expensive and time consuming, and I just couldn't afford to do it very much. We blue collar wizards have to sling a few spells out where we can hope that they don't go stale at the wrong time. I would have been a lot more comfortable had I been carrying my blasting rod or my staff, but that would be like showing up at Bianca's door in a tank, walking in carrying a machine gun and a flamethrower while announcing my intention to fight. I had to maintain a fine balance between going in ready for trouble and going in asking for trouble. Not that I was afraid, mind you. I didn't think Bianca would be willing to cause problems for a mortal wizard. Bianca wouldn't want to piss off the White Council by messing with me. On the other hand, I wasn't exactly the White Council's favorite guy. They might even look the other way if Bianca decided to take me quietly out of the picture. Careful, Harry, I warned myself. Don't get entirely paranoid. If you get like that, you'll be building your little apartment into a basement of solitude. What do you think? Asked Mister, who was... Once I was decked out in what paraphernalia I was willing to carry. Mister went to the door and batted it insistently. Everyone's a critic. Fine, fine. I sighed. I let him out, and then I went out. Got into my car and drove down to the Velvet Room in its expensive lakeside location. Bianca runs her business out of a huge old mansion from the early days of the Roaring '20s. Rumor has it that the infamous Al Capone had built it for one of his mistresses. There was a gate with the iron fence and a security guard. I pulled the Beetle up into the little swath of the driveway that began at the street end at the fence. There was a hiccoughing rattle from the back of the engine as I brought the machine to a halt. I rolled down the window, stuck my head out, peering back. Something went woof, and then black smoke poured out from the bottom of the car and sculled down the slope of the drive onto the street. I winced, and the engine gave an almost apologetic rattle and shuddered to its death. Great. Now I had no ride home. I got out of the Beetle and stood mourning it for a moment. The security guard on the other side of the gate was a blocky man, not overtly tall, but overly muscled and hiding it under an expensive suit. He studied me with attack dog eyes and then said through the gate, "Do you have an appointment?" "No," I told him. I think Bianca will want to see me." He looked unimpressed. "I'm sorry," he said. "Bianca is out for the evening." Things were never simple anymore. I shrugged at him, folded my arms, and leaned on the hood of the Beetle. "Suit yourself. I'll just stay until a tow truck comes by. I'll just stay until a tow truck comes by. Then, until I can get this thing out of the dryer for you." He stared at me, his eyes narrowed down to tiny slits with the effort of thinking. Eventually the thoughts got to his brain, got processed, and sent back with a message to pass the buck. "I'll call your name in," he said. "Good man," I approved. "You won't be sorry." "Name?" he growled. "Harry Dresden." If he recognized my name, it didn't show on his face. He glared at me in the Beetle and then walked a few paces off, lifting a cellular phone from his pocket into his ear. I listened. Listening isn't hard to do. No one has practice at it nowadays, but you can train yourself to pay attention to your senses if you work at it long enough. "I've got a guy down here that says Bianca will want to talk to him," the guard says his name is Harry Dresden. He was silent for a moment. I couldn't quite make out the buzz of the other voice other than it was female. "Uh-huh," he said. He glanced back at me. "Uh-huh," he said again. Sure, I will. Of course, ma'am." I reached in through the window of the Beetle and got out my cane. I rested it on the concrete beside my boots and tapped it a few times as though impatient. The guard turned back to me, leaned over to one side, and pushed a button somewhere. The gate buzzed and clicked open. "Come on in, Mr. Dresden," he said. "I have someone come tow your car if you like." "Super," I told him. I gave him the name of the wrecker Mike has a deal with and told him to tell the guy it was Harry's car again. Fido, the guard, dutifully noted this down, writing on a small notebook he drew from a pocket. While he did, I walked past him toward the house, clicking my cane on the concrete with every pace. "Stop," he told me, his voice calm and confident. "People don't speak like with that kind of absolute authority unless they have a gun in their hands." I stopped. "Put the cane down," he told me, "and put your arms up. You're to be searched before you're allowed inside." I sighed. I did what he said and let me pat me down. I didn't turn around to face him, but I could smell the metal of his gun. He found the knife and took it. His fingers brushed the nape of my neck, felt the chain there. "What's this?" he said. "Pentacle," I told him. "Let me see it." Use one hand. I used my left to draw it out of my shirt and show it to him. A silver 5-pointed star within the circle, all smooth geometry. He grunted. He said, "Fine." The search went on. He found the plastic squeeze bottle. He took it out of my pocket, opened it, and sniffed at it. "What's this?" "Health cola," I told him. "Smells like shit," he said. Capped it, put it back in my pocket. "What about my cane?" "Returned when you leave," he said. Damn. My knife and my cane had been my only physical lines of defense. Anything else I did would have to rely wholly upon magic, and that could be dicey on the best of days. It was enough to rattle me. Of course, Fido the guard had missed a couple of things. He had overlooked the clean white handkerchief in my pocket. Second, he had passed me on with my pentacle still upon my neck. He probably figured that since it wasn't a crucifix or a cross, that I couldn't use it to keep Bianca away from me. Which wasn't true. Vampires and other such creatures don't respond to symbols as such. They respond to the power that accompanies an act of faith. I couldn't ward off a vampire mosquito with my faith in the Almighty. He and I have just never seemed to connect. But the pentacle was a symbol of magic itself, and I had plenty of faith in that. And of course, Fido overlooked my getaway potion. Bianca really ought to trust her guards with more awareness of the supernatural and what sort of things to look for. The house itself was elegant, very roomy, with high ceilings and broad floors that they just don't make anymore. A well-groomed young woman with a short, straight haircut greeted me in the enormous entry hall. I was passing polite to her until she showed me to a library, its walls lined with old books and leather bindings, and similar to the leather-cushioned chairs around the enormous old dogfoot table in the center of the room center. I took a seat and waited. More than half an hour went by before Bianca finally arrived. She came into the room like a candle burning with a cold, clear flame. Her hair was a burnished shade of auburn that was too dark to cast back any ruddy highlights, but did anyway. Her eyes were dark, clear, her complexion flawlessly smooth and elegantly graced with cosmetics. She was not a tall woman, but shapely, wearing a black dress with a plunging neckline and a slash on one side that showed off a generous portion of pale thigh. Black gloves covered her hands to above the elbows, and her $300 shoes were a study in high-heel torture devices. She looked too good to be true. Now, I've got an ad break in about 5 minutes. At that time, I think I may adjust my lighting here, because apparently the sun is in a different position than it should be. Either that, or we're getting some cloud cover. It's not near as bright at this time of day as it usually is. Mr. Dresden, she greeted me, this is an unexpected pleasure. I rose when she entered the room. Madam Bianca, I replied, nodding to her. We meet at last. Hearsay neglected to mention how lovely you are. She laughed, lips shaping the sounds, head falling back just enough to flash a pale throat. A gentleman, they said. I see that they were correct. It is a charmingly passe thing to be a gentleman in this country. You and I are of another world, I said. She approached me and extended her hand, a motion oozing feminine grace. I bowed over her hand briefly, taking it and brushing my lips against the back of her glove. Do you really think I am beautiful, Mr. Dresden? She asked me. As lovely as a star, madam. Polite and a pretty one, too, she murmured. Her eyes flickered over me from head to toe, but even she avoided meeting gazes with me, whether it was a desire to avoid inadvertently directing her power at me or being on the receiving end of mine, I couldn't tell. She continued into the room and stopped beside one of the comfortable chairs. As a matter of course, I stepped around the table and drew out the chair for her, seating her. She crossed her legs in that dress and in those shoes and made it look good. I blinked for just a moment and then returned to my own seat. So, Mr. Dresden, what brings you to my humble house? Care for an evening of entertainment? I quite assure you that you will never have another experience like it. She placed her hands in her lap, smiling at me. I smiled at her and put one hand in my pocket onto the white handkerchief. No, thank you. I came to talk. Her lips parted into a silent, ah, I see. About what, I may ask? About Jennifer Stanton and her murder. I had all of a second's warning. Bianca's eyes narrowed, then widened like those of a cat about to spring. Then she was coming at me over the table. Faster than a breath, her arms extended toward my throat. I toppled over backward in my chair. Even though I'd started to move first, it almost wasn't enough to get away from her reaching nails in time. One grazed my throat with a hot sensation of pain, then she kept coming, following me down to the floor with those rich lips drawn back from sharp fangs. I jerked my hand out of my pocket and flapped open my white hanky, releasing the image of sunlight I had been storing for use in potions. It lit up the room for a moment, brilliant. The light smashed into Bianca, hurling her back across the old table into one of the shelves, and tore pieces of flesh away from her like bits of rotten meat being peeled from a carcass by a sandblaster. She screamed, and the flesh around her mouth sloughed and peeled away like a snake's scales. I had never seen a real vampire before. I would have time to be terrified later. I took in the details as I tugged my talisman off over my neck. It had a bat-like face, hard and ugly. The head was too big for its body, gaping, hungry jaws. Its shoulders were hunched and powerful. Membranous wings stretched between the joints of its almost skeletal arms. Its eyes wide, black, and staring, and kind of leathery, slimy hide covered its flesh like an inner tube lathered with Vaseline, though there were tiny holes corroded in it by the sunlight I'd brought with me. It recovered quickly, crouching and spreading long arms, the ending claw and tipped fingers to the other side with a hiss of rage. I drew my pentacle into my fist, raised it like every vampire slayer you ever saw done it, and said, Jesus Christ, lady, I came here to talk. The vampire hissed and started toward me with a gangling, weirdly graceful step. Its clawed feet were still wearing the $300 black pumps. Back, I said, taking a step toward it myself. The pentacle began to burn with cold, clear light of applied will and belief, my faith, if you will, if that it could turn such a monster aside. It hissed and turned its face aside, lifting its membranous arms to shield its eyes from the light. It took one step back and then another, and until its back was pressed against the wall of books. Now what did I do? I wasn't going to try to put a stake through her heart, but if I lowered my will, she might come at me again. I didn't think I had anything, even the quickest evocations that I could get out of my mouth before she tore it off my head. And even if I got past her, she probably had mortal lackeys like the security guard at the gate who would be happy to kill me if they saw me trashing their mistress. You killed her, the vampire snarled, and his voice was exactly the same, sultry and feminine, even though twisted by rage and coming from that hard mouth. It was unsettling. You killed Jennifer. She was mine, Mugling. She was mine, Mageling. Look, I told her, I didn't come here for any of this, and please know I'm here. Save yourself a lot of trouble. Sit down, talk with me, and then we'll both go away happy. Christ, Bianca, do you think if I'd killed Jennifer and Tommy Tom, that I'd just be waltzing in here like this? Oh, shit, the ad break started. Oops. I'm going to take a pause for the cuz for a second. Oh, sorry, Kiki. I didn't know you were there. I swiveled in my seat too far, and the kitty was right there. I did not realize my sunlight is dying, and I've got to get some light. My eyes are just killing me. No, baby, I got to close it. Light apparently is not with us today. Oh, and I'll be right back. Sorry about that. Taking a very long drink off my water. Whew. Um, Let me rub my eyes a little bit here to get readjusted. No, seriously though, I was losing daylight and I was using daylight to read from, and it was just absolutely killing me. So, whew. And the ad break is gone. We are back. Give me 1 second. Just a note of fact: as soon as I get to the stopping point with the reading, I'm going to swap to Dreamlight Valley because there's new content. Okay, now here we go. You expect me to believe that you didn't? You will never leave this house alive. I was feeling angry myself and frightened. Christ, even the vampire thought I was the bad guy. What will it take to convince you that I didn't do it? Black bottomless eyes stared at me through the burning fire of my faith. I could feel some sort of power they were trying to get at me, and held off by the force of my will, just as the creature itself was. The vampire snarled, "Lower the amulet, wizard. If I do, are you going to come at my throat again? If you do not, I most certainly will." Shaky logic, that. I tried to work through the situation from her point of view. She had been scared when I showed up. She had me searched and divested of weapons as best she could. She thought I was Jennifer Staunton's murderer. Would the mere mention of that name have brought that sudden violence out of her? I began to get that sinking feeling you get when you realize that not everything is as it appears. If I put this down, I told her, I want your word that you'll sit down and talk to me. I swear to you by fire and wind that I have nothing to do with her death. The vampire hissed at me, shielding its eyes from the light with one taloned hand. Why should I believe you? Why should I believe you? I countered. Yellowed fangs shone in its mouth. If you do not trust my word, wizard, then how can I trust yours? Then you give it? The vampire stiffened, and though its voice was still harsh with rage and pain, still sexy as a silk shirt without any buttons, I thought I heard the ring of truth in the words. You have my promise. Lower your talisman and we will talk. Time for another calculated risk. I tossed the pinnacle onto the table. The cold light drained away, leaving the room lit by mere electricity once more. The vampire slowly lowered its arms, blinking its two big eyes at me and then at the pinnacle upon the table. A long pink tongue flickered out nervously over its jaws and lower face, then slipped back into its mouth. I was surprised, I realized, surprised that I had done it. My heart was racing, but I forced my fear back down out of my forebrain into the background. Vampires are like demons, like wolves, like sharks. You don't let them think that you're potential food and get their respect at the same time. The vampire's true appearance was grotesque, but it wasn't as bad as some of the things I've seen in my day. Some demons were a lot worse, and some of the elder things could rip your mind apart just by letting you look at them. I regarded the creature with a level gaze. How about it? I said. Let's talk. The longer we sit around staring at one another, the longer Jennifer's killer stays free. The vampire stared at me for a moment more, then it shuddered, drawing its winged membranes about itself. Black slime turned into patches of pale, perfect flesh that spread over the vampire's dark skin like a growth of fungus. Bianca stood before me a moment later, settling her dress back into modesty again, her arms crossed over her as though she was cold, her back stiff and her eyes angry. She was no less beautiful than she had been a few moments before. Not a line or a curve any different, but for me the glamour had been ruined. She still had the same eyes, dark and fathomless and alien. I would always remember what she truly looked like beneath her flesh mask. I stooped and picked up my chair, riding it. Then I went around the table, turned my back on her, and stood hers up as well. Then I held it out for her just as I had when I entered the room. She stared at me for a long time. Some expression flickered across her face. She was disconcerted by an apparent lack of concern about the way she looked, and it told. Then she lifted her chin proud and settled gracefully into the chair again, wrinkled as any queen, every line stiff with anger. The old world rules of courtesy and hospitality were holding, but for how long? I returned to my seat and leaned over to pick up my white handkerchief, toying with it. Bianca's angry eyes flickered down to it. And once again she repeated the nervous gesture of licking her teeth and lips, though this time her tongue looked human. So, tell me about Jennifer and Tommy Tom, I said. She shook her head, almost sneering. I can tell you what I told the police. I don't know who could have killed them. Come on, Bianca, we don't have to hide things from one another. We're not part of the mortal world. Her eyebrows slanted down, revealing more anger. No, you're the only one in the city with the kind of skill required to cast that sort of spell. If you didn't do it, I have no idea who else could have. You don't have any enemies? Anyone who might have been wanting to make an impression on you? A bitter little line appeared at the corner of her lips, something that was not quite a smile, of course, but none of them could have managed what happened to Tommy and Jenny. She drummed her fingernails over the tabletop, leaving little score marks in the wood. I don't let any enemies that dangerous run around alive, at least not for long. I settled back in my chair, frowning, and did my damnedest not to let her see how scared I was. How did you know Tommy Tom? She shrugged, her shoulders gleaming like porcelain, and just as brittle. You may have thought he was just a bruise for Johnny Marcone, Mr. Dresden, but Tommy was a very gentle and considerate man underneath. He was always good to his women. He treated them like real people. Her gaze shifted from side to side, not lifting. Her like human beings, I wouldn't take on a client if I thought he wouldn't be a gentleman, but Tommy was better than most. I met him years ago elsewhere. I always made sure he had someone to take care of him when he wanted an evening of company. You sent Jennifer out to him that night? She nodded, her expression bleak. Her nails drummed the tabletop again, gouging out more wood. Was there anyone else he saw on a regular basis? Maybe someone who would have talked to him, known what was going on in his life? Bianca shook her head. No, she said, but then she frowned. I just watched her and absolutely tossed the handkerchief onto the tabletop. Her eyes flicked to it and then up to mine. I didn't flinch. I met her bottomless gaze and quirked my mouth up in a little smile, as though I had something more and worse to pull out of my hat if she wanted to come after me again. I saw her anger, her rage, and just for a moment I got a peek inside and saw the source of it. She was furious that I had seen her true form, horrified and embarrassed that I had stripped her disguise away and seen the creature beneath, and she was afraid that I could take away even her mask forever with my power. More than anything else, Bianca wanted to be beautiful, and tonight I destroyed her illusion. I had rattled her gilded little world, and she sure as hell wasn't going to let me forget that. She shuddered and jerked her eyes away, furious and frightened at the same time, before I could see any deeper, or she into me. If I had not given you my word, Dresden, she whispered, I would kill you this instant. That would be unfortunate, I said. I kept my voice hard. You should know the risk in a wizard's death curse. You've got something to lose, Bianca, and even if you could take me out, you'd bet your pretty ass I'd be dragging you into hell with me. She stiffened and turned her head to one side and let her fingers go limp. It was a silent, bitter surrender. She didn't move quickly enough for me to miss seeing a tear streak down one cheek. I had made a vampire cry. Great. I felt like a real superhero. Harry Dresden, breaker of monsters' hearts. There might be one person that might know something, she said, her lovely voice dull, flat, and lifeless. I had a woman who worked for me, Linda Randall. She and Jennifer went out on calls together when customers wanted that sort of thing. They were close. Where is she now? I asked. She's working as a driver for some rich couple who wanted a servant that could do more than windows. She wasn't the type I usually keep around in any case. I think Jennifer had her phone number. I can have someone fetch it for you, Mr. Dresden. She said my name as though it was something bitter and poisonous she wanted to spit out. Thank you. That would be very kind. I kept my tone carefully formal, neutral. Formality and a good bluff were all that was keeping her from my throat. She remained quiet, controlling her evident emotions before she started to look up again at last. Her eyes froze, then widened until they came to my throat. Her expression went perfectly, inhumanly still. I grew tense, not just tense, but still tight, wire-brown, spring-coiled. I was out of tricks and weapons. If she came after me now, I wasn't going to get the chance to defend myself. There was no way would be able to drink the potion before she tore me apart. I gripped the arms of my chair hard to keep myself from bolting. Do not show fear. Do not run away. It would only make her chase me, snap her instincts into reaction of pursuing the prey. You're bleeding, Mr. Dresden, she whispered. I lifted my hand slowly to my throat where her nails had scored me earlier. My fingertips came away slick with my own blood. Bianca kept staring. Her tongue flickered around her mouth again. Cover it, she whispered. A strange, mewling sound came from her mouth. Cover it, Dresden. I picked up my handkerchief and pressed it over my throat. Bianca blinked, her eyes closed slowly, and then turned away, half hunched over her stomach. She didn't stand up. Go, she told me. Go now. Paula's coming. I'll send her down to the gate with the phone number for a little while. I walked toward the door and stopped, glancing back at her. There was a sort of hard fascination to it, to know what was beneath their luring exterior, the flesh mask, but seeing it twist and writhe with need. Go, Bianca whispered. Fury, hunger, and some emotion I couldn't even begin to fathom made her voice stretched out thinner. Go, and do not think I will not remember this night. Do not think I will not make you regret it. The door of the library opened, and a straight-haired young woman who had greeted me earlier entered the room. She gave me a passing glance and walked past me, kneeling at Bianca's feet. Paula, I presumed. Paula remembered something too soft to hear, gently brushing Bianca's hair back from her face with one hand. Then she unbuttoned the sleeve of her blouse, rolled up past her elbow, and pressed her wrist to Bianca's mouth. I had a good view of what happened. Bianca's tongue flashed out, long and pink and sticky, smearing Paula's wrist with shining saliva. Paula shuddered at the touch, her breath coming quicker. and she let her head fall slowly backwards. Her eyes were glazed over with narcotic languor like a junkie who had just shot up. Bianca's fangs extended and slashed open Paula's pale, pretty skin. Blood welled. Bianca's tongue began to flash in and out, faster than can really be seen, lapping the blood up as quickly as it appeared. Her dark eyes were narrowed distance. Paula was gasping, her entire body shivering. I felt a little sick and withdrew step by step, not turning my back on the scene. Paula toppled slowly before writhing her way toward unconsciousness with evident glee. Bianca followed her down, unladylike now, a creature of bestial hunger. She crouched over the supine woman in the hunch of her pale shoulders I could see the bat-like thing beneath the flesh mask lapping at Paula's blood. I got out of there fast, shutting the door behind me. My heart was hammering too quickly. The scene with Paula might have aroused me, but if I hadn't seen what was underneath Bianca's mask. Instead, it only made me sick to my stomach, afraid. The woman had given herself to that thing as quickly and as willingly as any woman to her lover. The saliva, some part of me rationalized, desperate to latch on something cold and logical and detached. The saliva was probably narcotic, perhaps even addicted. It explained Paula's behavior, the need to have more of her drug, but I wondered if Paula would have been so eager had she known Bianca's true face. Excuse me. Let me take a drink. Sorry. I'm getting to the point where my voice is starting to die. Give me one moment. Excuse me. I apologize. Sometimes you get that the sinus is going, and even water can't quench it for some reason. Now I understood why White Council was so hard-nosed with vampires. If they could get that kind of control over a mortal, what would happen if they could get their hooks into a wizard? If they could addict a wizard to them as thoroughly as Bianca had the girl I'd just seen, surely it wasn't possible. But if it wasn't, why would the council be so nervous about them? Do not think I will not make you regret it, she had said. I felt cold as I hurried down the driveway to the gate. Fido, the security guard, was waiting for me at the front gate and passed back my knife and my cane without a word. A tow truck was out front, latching itself to the Beetle. I put one hand on the cold metal of the grate and kept the other with its handkerchief pressed to my throat as I watched George, the tow truck guy, work. He recognized me and waved, flashing a grin that showed up the white teeth in his dark face. I nodded back. I wasn't up to answering the smile. A few minutes later, the guard's cellular phone beeped at him, but he withdrew a few several paces, repeated several affirmatives, then took a notebook from his pocket. Writing something down, he put the phone away and walked back over to me, offering me the piece of paper. "What's this?" I said. "The phone number you were looking for and a message." I glanced at the paper, but avoided reading it just then. I thought Bianca was going to send Paula down with it. He didn't say anything, but his jaw tightened, and I saw his eyes flick toward the house where his mistress was. He swallowed. Paula wasn't coming out of the house, and Fido was afraid. I took the paper and kept my hand from shaking as I looked at it. On it was a phone number and a single word: regret. I folded the piece of paper in half, put it away into the pocket of my duster. Another enemy, super. At least with my hands in my pockets, Fido couldn't see them shaking. Maybe I should have listened to Murphy. Maybe I should have stayed home and played with some nice, safe, forbidden black magic instead. Chapter 10. I departed Bianca's place in George's Loner, a wood-paneled Studebaker that grumbled and growled and squealed everywhere it went. I stopped at the payphone a short distance from the house and called Linda Randall's number. The phone rang several times before a quiet, dusky contralto answered. "Beckett's, this is Linda." Linda Randall asked. "Mm-hmm," she answered. She had a furry, velvety voice, something tactile. "Who's this?" "My name is Harry Dresden. I was wondering if I could talk to you." "Harry who?" she asked. "Dresden. I'm a private investigator." She laughed, the sound rich enough to roll around naked in. "Investigating my privates, Mr. Dresden? I like you already." Yes, Miss Randall. "Miss," she said, cutting in. "Miss Randall, I'm not occupied at the moment." "Miss Randall," I amended, I'd like to ask you some questions about Jennifer Stanton, if I could." Silence on the other end of the line. I could hear some sounds in the background, a radio playing, perhaps a recorded voice talking about white zones and red zones and loading and unloading of vehicles. "Miss Randall?" "No," she said. "It won't take long, and I assure you aren't the subject of anything I'm doing. If you could just give me a few minutes of your time." "No," she told me. "I'm on duty and will be here the rest of the night. I don't have time for this." "Jennifer Stanton was a friend of yours. She's been murdered. If there's anything you could tell me that might help." She cut me off again. "There isn't," she said. "Goodbye, Mr. Dresden." The line went dead. I scowled at the phone, frustrated. That was it then. I had gone through all the preparation to face off with Bianca and possible future trouble for nothing. No way, I thought. No way in hell. Bianca had said that Linda Randall was working as a driver for someone, the Becketts, I presumed, or whoever they were. I'd recognized the voice in the background as a recorded message that played outside the concourses at the O'Hare Airport. So she was in a car at the airport, maybe waiting to pick up the Becketts, and definitely not there for long. With no time to lose, I kicked the wheezing old Studebaker into gear and drove to O'Hare. It was far easier to blow off someone over the phone than it was to do it in person. There were several concourses, but I had to trust to luck to guide me to the right one, and luck to get me there before Miss I'm Not Occupied Randall had the opportunity to pick up her employers and leave, and a little more luck to keep the Studebaker running all the way to O'Hare. The Studebaker did make it all the way there, and on the second concourse I came across a silver baby limo idling in a parking zone. The interior was dark, and so I couldn't see inside very well. It was a Friday evening, and the place was busy. Business folk in their sober suits returning home from long trips about the country. Cars continually purred in and out of the semicircle drive. A uniformed cop was directing traffic, keeping people from doing brainless things like parking in the middle of one of the traffic lanes in order to load up the car. I swerved the old Studebaker into a parking place, racing a Volvo for it, winning by a dint of driving the older and heavier vehicle and having a more suicidal attitude. I kept an eye on the silver limo as I got out of the car and strode over to a bank of payphones. I popped my quarter in and once more dialed the number provided by Bianca. The phone rang. In the silver limo, someone stirred. Beckett's, this is Linda, she purred. Hello, Linda, I said. This is Harry Dresden again. I could almost hear her smirk. There was a flicker of light from inside the car, the silhouette of a woman's face, and the orange glow of a cigarette being lit. I thought I'd told you I didn't want to talk to you, Mr. Dresden. I like women who play hard to get. She laughed, that delicious laugh. I could see her head move in the darkened car when she did. I'm getting harder to get by the second. Goodbye again, she hung up on me. I smiled, hung up the phone, walked over to the limo, and rapped on the window. It buzzed in. A woman in her mid-20s arched an eyebrow at me. She had beautiful eyes the color of rain clouds and a little too much eyeshadow. A brilliant scarlet lipstick on her Cupid's bow lips. Her hair was medium brown, drawn back into a tight braid that made her cheeks look almost sharp, severe, except for her forelocks, which hung down to her eyes in an insolent disarray. She had a predatory look to her, harsh, sharp. She wore a crisp, bright shirt, gray slacks, and held a little cigarette in one hand. The smoke curled up around my nose, and I exhaled, trying to push it away. She looked me up and down, frankly assessing. Don't tell me. Harry Dresden. I really need to talk to you, Miss Randall. It won't take long. She glanced at her watch and at the terminal doors, then back up at me. Well, you've got me cornered, don't you? I'm at your mercy. Her lips quirked. She took a drag of her cigarette, and I like a man who just won't stop. I cleared my throat again. The woman was attractive, but not unduly so, yet there was something about her that revved my engines, something about the way she held her head or shaped her words that bypassed my brain and went straight to my hormones. Best to head directly to the point, minimize my chances of looking moronic. How'd you know Jennifer Stanton? She looked up at me through the long lashes intimately. You work for Bianca with her. Linda blew more smoke. That prissy little bitch. Yes, I work with Jen. We were roommates for a while, shared a bed. She wrapped her lips around the last word, drawing it out with a little tremor that dripped wicked secret laughter. Did you know Tommy Tom? I asked. Oh, sure. Fantastic in bed. She lowered her eyes and shifted on the car seat, lowering one of her hands out of sight, making me wonder where it'd gone. He was a regular customer. Maybe twice a month, Jen and I would go to his place to have a little party. She leaned toward me. He could do things to a woman that would turn her into a real animal, Harry Dresden. You know what I mean? Growling and snarling and heat. She was driving me crazy. That voice of hers inspired the kind of dreams you wish you could remember more clearly in the morning. Her expression promised to show me things that you don't talk about with other people if I would give her half a chance. Your job, Harry. Think about your job. Some days I really hate my job. When was the last time you talked to her? She took another drag. This time I saw a small shake to her fingers. One she quickly hid, but just not quickly enough. She was nervous enough to be shaking. And now I could see what she was up to. She was wearing the alley cat mask, appealing to my glands instead of my brain, trying to distract me with it, trying to keep me from finding something out. I'm not inhuman. I can be distracted by pretty face or body like any other youngish man. Linda Randall was damn good at playing the part, but I do not like to be made a fool. So, Miss Sex Goddess, what are you hiding? I cleared my throat and asked mildly, when was the last time you spoke to Jennifer Stanton, Miss Randall? She narrowed her eyes at me. She wasn't dumb. Wherever else she was, she had seen me reading her through. Seeing through her pretense, the flirting manner vanished. Are you a cop? She demanded. I shook my head. Scout's honor. I'm just trying to find out what happened to her. Damn it, she said softly. She flicked the butt of the cigarette onto the concrete and blew out a mouthful of smoke. Look, I'll tell you anything and see a cop coming around. I never saw you before, got it? I nodded. I talked to Jen on Wednesday morning. On Wednesday evening, she called me. It was Tommy's birthday. She wanted to get together again. Her mouth sort of twisted, sort of a reunion. I glanced about and leaned down closer to her. Did you? Her eyes were roving about now, nervous like a cat who has found herself and shut into a small room. No, she said. I had to work. I wanted to, but did you see anything unusual? Anything that might have made you suspect she was in danger? She shook her head. No, nothing. We hadn't talked much for a while. I didn't see her as much after I split from the velvet room. I frowned at her. Do you know what else she was doing? Anything she might have been involved in that could have gotten her hurt? She shook her head. No, nothing like that. That wasn't her style. She was sweet. A lot of girls they get pretty jaded, Mr. Dresden, but never really touched her. She made people feel better about themselves somehow. She looked away. I could never do that. All I did was get them off. There's nothing you could tell me, nothing you can think of. She pressed her lips together and shook her head. She shook her head and she lied to me as she did it. I was just as sure of it. She was closing in, tightening up, and if there was nothing to tell me, she wouldn't be trying to hide it. She must know something unless she was just shutting down because I stomped all over her feelings just ahead Bianca's. Either way, she wasn't telling me anything else. I tightened my fist, frustrated. If Linda had no information for me, I was at a dead end, and I'd romped all over another woman's feelings, too, in one night. You're on a rope, Dresden, even if one of them had been something not human. Why, I asked her, the words slipping out before I thought about them. Why the slut act? She looked up at me again, smirched. I saw the subtle shifting in her mind, find that sort of animal appeal she had once more as she had been doing when I first approached her, but didn't hide the self-loathing in her eyes. I looked away quickly before I could see any more of it. I got the feeling that I didn't want to see Linda Randall's soul. Because it's what I do, Mr. Dresden. For people, it's drugs, booze. For me, orgasm, sex, passion. It's just another addict. City's full of them. She glanced aside. Next best thing to love, and it keeps me in work. Excuse me. She swung open the door. I took a quick step back and out of her way. She moved back to the trunk, moved to the back of the limo, long legs taking long steps, and opened the trunk. A tall couple, both wearing glasses and dressed in stylish gray business clothes, emerged from the terminal and approached the limo. They had the look of lifestyle professionals, the kind that have a career and no kids, with enough money and time to spend on making themselves look good. A Nordic track couple. He was carrying an overnight bag over his shoulder and a small suitcase in one hand, while she bore only a briefcase. They wore no jewelry, not even watches or wedding rings. Odd. The man slung the luggage items into the limo's trunk and looked from Linda to me. Linda avoided his eyes. He tried to speak quietly enough not to be heard, but I have good ears. Who's this? He asked. His voice had a strained note to it. Just a friend, Mr. Beckett, a guy I used to see. She answered him. More lies, more interesting. I looked across the limo to the woman, presumably Mrs. Beckett. She regarded me with a calm face, entirely void of emotion. It was a little spooky. She had the look I'd seen in films on the faces of prisoners released from the German Stalags at the end of World War II. Empty, numb, dead, and just didn't know it yet. Linda opened the back door and let Mr. and Mrs. Beckett into the car. Miss Beckett briefly put a hand on Linda's waist in passing, a gesture that was too intimate, possessive for the hired help. I saw Linda shiver and then close the door. She walked back to the car to me. Get out of here, she said quietly. I don't want to get in any trouble with my boss. I reached for her hand, grabbed it, and held it between both of mine as an old lover might, I suppose. My business card was pressed between our palms. My card. If you think of anything else, give me a call, okay? She turned away from me without answering, but the card vanished into a pocket before she got back into the limo. Mrs. Beckett's dead eyes watched me through the side window as the limo went by me. It was my turn to shiver. Like I said, spooky. I went on to the airport. The monitors displaying flight times and flickered to fuzz as I walked by. I went to one of the cafes inside and sat down and ordered myself a cup of coffee. I had to pay for it with change. Most of my money had gone into paying off last month's rent and into the love potion I'd let Bob talk me into making. Money. I needed to get to work on Monica Sell's case. Finding her husband. I didn't want to get out of hot water with the White Council only to lose my office and apartment because I couldn't pay bills. I sipped coffee as I tried to organize my thoughts. I had two areas of concern. The most important was finding who had killed Tommy Tom and Jennifer Stanton, not only to catch the killer before any more corpses turned up, but because I didn't, the White Council would probably use the opportunity to have me put to death. And while tracking down killers and avoiding execution squads, I had to do some work for someone who would pay me. Tonight's excursion wasn't something I could charge Murphy for. She'd have my ass in a sling if she knew I was running around asking questions, poking my nose where I shouldn't be. So if I wanted money from Chicago PD, I would have to spend time doing the research Murphy wanted, the black magic research that would get me killed all by itself. Or I could work on Monica Settle's missing husband case. I thought I had that one pretty well pegged down, but it wouldn't hurt to get it fleshed out fully. I could spend time working on it, fill out the hours on the retainer, and maybe even get a few more added on. That appealed to me a lot more than trying to work out some black magic. So I could follow up on the lead Toot Toot had given me. There had been pizza delivered out to the Lake Providence home that night. Time to talk to the delivery man if possible. I left the cafe, went out to the payphones, and dialed directory assistance. There was only one place near Lake Providence address that delivered pizza. I got the number and dialed through. Pizza Express, said someone to his mouthful. What will it be tonight? Hey there, I said. I wonder if you can help me out. I'm looking for the driver who took an order out to an address on Wednesday night. I told him the address and asked if I could speak to the driver. Another one, he snorted. Sure, hang on, Jack. Just got in from a run. The voice on the other end of the line called out to someone. A minute later, a high baritone of a young man spoke tentatively in my ear. Hello? Hello, I answered. Are you the driver who took the pizza to? Look, he said, his voice exasperated and nervous. I said I was sorry. It won't happen again. I blinked at him for a minute, off balance. Sorry for what? Jesus, he said. I heard him move across the room with a lot of music and loud talk in the background, and then the background noise cut off as though he'd stepped into another room and shut the door behind him. Look, he said in a half whine. I told you I'm not going to say anything to anyone. I was only looking. Can you blame me, right? No one answered the door. What was I supposed to do? His voice cracked in the middle of his sentence. It's hell of a party, but hey, that's your business, right? I struggled to keep up with the kid. What exactly did you see, Jack? I asked him. No one's face, he assured me. His voice growing more nervous. He gave a jittery little laugh and tried to joke. Better things to look at than faces, right? I mean, I don't give a damn what you do in your own house or your friends or whoever. Don't worry about me. You're never going to say anything. Next time I'll just leave the pizza and run the tab, right? Friends, plural. Interesting. The kid was awfully nervous. He must have gotten an eyeful, but I had a gut instinct he was hiding something else, keeping it back. What else? I asked him. I kept my voice calm and neutral. You saw something else. What was it? None of my business, he said instantly. None of my business. Look, I got to get off this line. We have to keep it open for orders. It's Friday night. We're busy as hell. What? I said, separating my words, keeping them clipped. Else. Oh, shit, he breathed, his voice shaking. Look, I wasn't with that guy. I didn't know anything about him. I didn't tell him you were having an orgy out there. Honest, Jesus, mister, I don't want any trouble. Victor Sells seemed to really have a good idea of how to party and how to fight teenagers. One more question, and I'll let things go, I told him. Who was it you saw? Tell me about him. I don't know him. I didn't recognize him. Some guy with a camera, that's all. I went around the back of the house to try the back door, got up on your deck, and just saw him inside. I didn't keep looking, but he was up there, all in black, with his camera, taking pictures. He paused as someone pounded on the door he had closed earlier. Oh, God, I have to go, mister. I don't know you. I don't know nothing. And there was a scrambling of feet, and he hung up the phone. I hung up the phone myself and ambled back to George's loaner. I worked out the details I just learned on the way back to my apartment. Someone else had called Pizza Express evidently just before I had. Someone else had gone asking after the pizza boy. Who? Why, Victor Sells, of course, tracing down people who might have information about his possible presence in the lake house. Victor Sells, who may have been having some sort of get-together out that night, maybe even drunk, or one of his guests hadn't ordered the pizza, and now Victor was trying to cover his tracks. Which implied that Victor had knew someone was looking for him. Hell, as far as I knew, he'd been in the house when I'd gone out there last night. This made things a lot more interesting. A missing man who doesn't want to be found could get dangerous if someone came snooping after him. And a photographer? Someone looking around outside the windows taking pictures? I rummaged in my duster pocket. What the shit? What in the heck? Hold on, guys. Give me a second. Booty.
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 Oh, wait, hold on.
I'm on the booty.
I need to
Your
grab
shit.
this. Oh. What the heck?
Bunny was standing on the booty and you knocked her off the booty.
No, I jumped off the booty because I knew I was standing on the booty, so I went to get off the booty and I yeeted my booty.
That's a lot of booty in that whole sentence right there.
Okay.
Yo.
That's everything from there. So let's...
See, I sailed all the way here about just me and Bunny, but that's sail here lately.
Well, shit.
Kill him.
Dodge button is your friend, Benny.
Just loaded my last magazine.
Fuck off,
No
dude.
more of that.
Let Bunny do it. Bunny, hit Y on him. Oh, damn it.
Sorry.
How are you?
I was a little too quick, sorry.
We fucked him up.
Alright, let's
Says
things.
I got an achievement
Yay.
Well, come on,
for
Bunny,
killing the
let's go.
Tookie.
Let's go.
I'm stuck.
How are you stuck?
I was right. Ranvi! No. Cassandra.
Told
And
you,
you are?
Roman.
Your opponent.
For those of you that don't follow what I do, don't get out of the car!
What?
The fuck, Jay?
Nobody makes fun of me for being angry, but this here feels right.
Jesus. God damn it, Jay. Don't get out of the cure until I say get out of the cure. Oi. Because what you're gonna want to see some magic here. Give me a second.
Okay. Oh,
So where are you motherfuckers at? Ah, you're gonna do what now? Oh wait. No time for me to really start some trouble. How about a little fire, Scarecrow? Shit's on fire, yo. Sorry about that, guys. There's just a temporary. Somebody was at the door and wanting to know stuff. I need to figure out, okay, where did I get to? Excuse me. It's all go, I tell you. This is probably my last chapter, though. My eyes are starting to get a little. Let's see, where did I get to? Oh, yes. And why would somebody be out there at the house taking pictures of Victor and his friends? Maybe because Monica had hired someone else, a PI, without telling me. Maybe just the neighbor with the hots for taking dirty pictures. No way to tell, really. More mysteries. I pulled the Studebaker into my drive and killed the engine. I tallied the score for the evening. Enigma's lots, Harry 0. My investigation for Monica's sales had netted me one husband throwing wild parties at his beach after losing his job and working hard not to be found, probably an advanced case of male menopause. Monica didn't seem to be the kind of woman who would take such a thing with good grace, more like the kind who would close her eyes and call me a liar if I told her the truth. But at least it merited a little more looking into. I could log a few more hours in on the case, maybe earn some more money out before I gave her the bill. But I still didn't really know anything. The angle with Bianca had come to a dead end at Linda Randall. All I had was more questions for Miss Randall, and she was as closed as a bank on a Sunday. I didn't have anything solid enough to hand to Murphy to let her pursue the matter, damn it. I was going to have to do some research after all. Maybe it would turn up something helpful, some kind of clue to help lead me and the police to the murderer. And maybe dragons would fly on my butt, but I had to try. So I got out of the car to go inside and get to work. He was waiting for me behind the trash cans that stood next to the stairs leading down to my front door. The baseball bat he swung at me took me behind the ear and pitched me to the bottom of the stairs in a near senseless heap. I could hear his footsteps but couldn't quite move as he came downstairs toward me. It figured just the kind of day I was having. I felt his foot on the back of my neck, felt him lift the baseball bat. Then it came whistling down toward my skull with a mighty crack of impact, except that it missed my motionless head and whacked in the concrete next to my face right by my eyes instead. Listen up, Dresden, my attacker said. His voice was rough, low, personally hoarse. You got a big nose. Stop sticking it where people don't belong. You got a big mouth. Stop talking to people you don't need to talk to, or we're going to shut that mouth of yours. He waited a melodramatically appropriate moment and then added, permanently. His footsteps retreated upstairs and vanished. I just lay there watching the stars from my eyes for a while. Mister appeared from somewhere, probably drawn by the groaning noises, and started looking at my nose. I eventually regained my mobility and sat up. My head was spinning. I felt sick to my stomach. Mr. rubbed up against me as though he sensed something was wrong, purring in a low rumble. I managed to stand up long enough to unlock my apartment, let Mr. and myself in, and lock it behind me. I staggered over to my easy chair in the darkness, sat down with a woof of expelled breath. I sat motionless until the spinning slowed down enough to allow me to open my eyes again, until the pounding in my head calmed down. Pounding head. Someone could have been pounding on my head with a baseball bat just then, pounding my head into new and interesting shapes that were inconducive to carrying on business-like pursuits. Someone could have been pounding Harry Dresden right into the hereafter. I cut off the line of thought. You're not some poor rabbit, Dresden, I reminded myself sternly. You're a wizard of the old school, a spell slinger of the highest caliber. You're not going to roll over some schmuck with a baseball bat because he tells you, huh? Galvanized by the sound of my own voice, or maybe by a somewhat unsettling realization that I'd begun talking to myself, I stood up and built up the fire in the fireplace, then walked unsteadily back and forth from it, trying to think, trying to work out details. Had this evening's visits triggered the warning? Who had reason to threaten me, and what were they trying to keep me from finding? Or most importantly, what was I going to do about it? Someone had seen me talking to Linda Randall, maybe, or more likely someone had seen me showing up at Bianca's place asking questions. The Blue Beetle may not be glitzy, but it is sort of difficult to mistake it for anyone else's car. Who would have reason to have me watched? Why hadn't gentleman Johnny Marcone followed me so that he could have a word with me, so he could ask me to keep out of the business with Tommy Thomas murders? Yes, he had. Maybe this had been another reminder from the mob boss. It had that kind of mafioso feel to it. I staggered to my kitchenette and fixed myself a Tisane tea for the headache and added in some aspirin. Herbal remedies are well and good, but I don't like to take chances. Working on that same principle, I got my Smith & Wesson 38 Chief Special out of its drawer and took the cloth covering off of it, make sure it was loaded. Then I stuck the revolver in my jacket pocket. Wizardry aside, it's enough to beat a gun for discouraging men with baseball bats. It's tough to beat a gun for discouraging men with baseball bats. I sure as hell wasn't going to roll over for the tiger-souled Johnny Marcone, let him push me around, let him know that it was all right to walk all over me whenever he felt like it. No way in hell or on earth either. My head was throbbing, my hands were shaking, but I went down the ladder to my workroom and started figuring out how to rip someone's heart out of his chest from 50 miles away. Who says I never do anything fun on a Friday night? All right, it is 15 after 3. We are on chapter 11, and I'm going to stop there for the day. I am trying to figure out where to put the book because I'm still kind of sorting out my space. For those of you that may or may not know. All right, I'll fucking move it off your stool, Renubus. Damn. Anyway, I'm still trying to figure out my space right now. No. Anyway, I hope you guys have enjoyed listening to me read the book again this week. Sadly, I have to work next Wednesday, so there won't be another reading until after that. Let me see where we're projected to read. That's our next reading day. I mean, it could be any day, to be truthful. Yikes. Every single freaking Wednesday. I may end up moving it to a Tuesday so we can at least have that afternoon to do it. Because apparently they're really loving scheduling me on Wednesdays lately, so. I am going to actually swap to playing some Dreamlight Valley. I know it's not really spooky, but they did drop some new content today that I wanted to show off. And I did about 2 hours worth of reading, which is about right for me. Dousing myself in a lot of water. But I hope you guys enjoyed it. I hope you're going to stick around for the gameplay. I am going to take a quick BRB. That BRB screen was that earlier BRB screen was a little let's just say I got caught on the hop or something. But anyway, guys, I hope you enjoyed it. I will be back in just a few moments with some going, and I will be back in just a moment.